For 2024, we had a bunch of new sleeping pads hit the market, and today I'm here to tell you which ones I think are the best of the thousands that I've tested. I've tested the newest and the most popular pads, so I can let you know which ones I think are the best for ultralighters, is the best affordable option, the most comfortable, and then the best all-arounder. You'll see that there's some notable exceptions as to which pads got awards, but I'll address those pads at the end of the video. There's also one sleeping pad company that didn't get any awards in 2023 that came out on top in two different categories for 2024. We're gonna start with the award for the best ultralight pad. Weight is obviously the priority for this category, but I wanted to also give this award to a pad that was comfortable. For me, it's just not worth it going out on a backpacking trip and being uncomfortable, even if I do have the lightest weight setup out there. The best ultralight pad award goes to the Xped Ultra 3R. It weighs 439 grams for the regular wide version. All the specs that I'm gonna be showing today are for the regular wide pads where applicable, or the long wides if there is no regular wide version. The Ultra 3R is actually lighter than the popular ultralight pad, the Thermarest X-Lite, in the regular wide mummy version. So you will be sacrificing a little bit of warmth compared to the X-Lite. The Ultra 3R only has an R value of 2.9, but I find it's plenty warm for most three-season conditions and actually sleeps a little bit warmer than that 2.9 R value rating in real-world conditions. The standout feature with the Ultra series of sleeping pads, though, is the comfort. They have vertical baffles, which I find a lot more comfortable than the horizontal baffles that the X-Lite has, and it has a kind of soft upper material that's a little bit stretchy, which really adds to a ton of comfort. The side baffles are also a little bit raised to help keep you centered on the pad, and overall, this has just been a really comfortable pad for me. An alternative ultralight option is the Thermarest X-Lite. It's been the leader for ultralight sleeping pads for a very long time. Where it stands apart from the Xped pad is warmth. It's gonna be a whole lot warmer with a higher R value compared to the Xped pad. Speaking of warmth, the award for the warmest sleeping pad goes to the Thermarest X-Therm. I backpack in the Canadian winter where temperatures often get down to -40. And in those kind of conditions, I'm prioritizing warmth and reliability. And that's where the Thermarest X-Therm really shines. There have been some new additions to the winter sleeping pad market, but the X-Therm is still my go-to because of how reliable it is and then how warm it sleeps when I'm actually out in cold conditions. It doesn't have the highest R value rating, but you may have noticed, and you are going to continue to notice, that R value is a good place to start when determining sleeping pad warmth, but it doesn't always reflect how warm a sleeping pad is actually going to perform once you get it out into real-world conditions. The one downside with the X-Therm is that it's definitely not a comfortable sleeping pad. It's not the biggest issue because in the winter I'm using big puffy sleeping bags and that adds a little bit of cushion, but these horizontal baffles definitely reduce the comfort a little bit. The types of trips where I'm using the X-Therm are winter trips. When temperatures start getting down below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, that's when I start looking at winter-specific sleeping pads. I find that three-season pads just really start to struggle once you start approaching that 20-degree Fahrenheit temperature. There's only really two other sleeping pads that I would consider for winter conditions. The first one is the Xped Ultra 7R. This is a very warm pad, pretty comfortable, but doesn't sleep quite as warm as the other two options and is quite a bit heavier and bulkier. The other option is the new Nemo Tensor Extreme Conditions. It has the highest R value out of any backpacking sleeping pad at 8.5 and is fairly comfortable, more comfortable than the X-Therm due to the baffling system that it uses. But the downside with the Tensor Extreme is that it doesn't quite live up to that 8.5 R value. I've A/B tested it against the X-Therm and found that the X-Therm sleeps just a little bit warmer. I've also encountered issues with reliability with the Tensor Extreme. I've used it in back-to-back nights where I've been in temperatures down to -30, and on one of those nights I was toasty warm, and then the next one I was cold, and then the next one, the third night, I was warm again, and that's because I kind of shook the pad and loosened up the insulation inside of it. It uses reflective insulation inside just like the X-Therm, but I think what might be happening is there's frost getting introduced in there, the film's kind of sticking together, so unless you kind of hit it a bit and shake it up, that film is going to stick together and then not provide you optimal warmth. So keep that in mind. I have had some issues with the Tensor Extreme. That being said, when it is sleeping warm, it's quite toasty. For the best affordable pad award, the pad has to be a good all-arounder, but at a lower price point. It's not going to be the best when it comes to weight, comfort, or warmth, but it's going to get the job done 90% of the time. The award goes to the Outdoor Vitals Oblivion sleeping pad. This pad kind of surprised me. It is heavy at 830 grams for the size large, but it's more comfortable than I expected and is warmer than I expected. That's due to the 3.5 R value, but then also due to this reflective top, which really adds a lot of warmth when you're using it with a quilt. The baffling system on the Oblivion is very similar to the Nemo Tensor in the fact that you have horizontal baffles, but then with light dimpling in order to add some comfort to it. but the top is a little bit stretchier, which adds a little bit more comfort compared to the Tensor line. If I was only backpacking 1 or 2 times a year or just getting into it, then I would definitely consider the Oblivion because it's gonna get the job done for you at a very affordable price point. And then if you realize that you need something a little bit more advanced, maybe something more ultralight, more comfortable, warmer, then you can take a look at those other pads that I'm gonna be talking about today. An alternative affordable option is the Prior Recharge sleeping pad. It's not as comfortable, it's not as warm, but it is a little bit less expensive and a great option if you're looking at affordable sleeping pads. Before we get into the best all-arounder sleeping pad, as well as those notable exceptions, we got to go over the most comfortable sleeping pad award. That's probably my favorite category out of all of them because I like a good night's sleep. And what makes a pad comfortable is 2 things: warmth. If you're not warm, you're not going to be comfortable. And then pressure relief. So as you're laying on a pad, especially if you're a side sleeper, if you have any pressure points, then you might have an arm go numb or fall asleep or your hip be sore. And with a comfortable pad, you're not having any of that. And you're able to kind of sleep through the night without waking up a whole bunch to toss and turn and shift positions. And that's been the case for me with the winner of this award, the REI Helix. I've had tons of nights where I've slept through the night without waking up at all, which is really crazy. I don't even have that at home most of the time. And the reason for that with the REI Helix is that it's a very warm sleeping pad with an R value of 4.9, and I've tested in a ton of different conditions. And then it's very comfortable due to the baffling system that it uses. You can see these little raised areas and then lowered areas. Those provide pressure relief as you lay on the pad because the raised areas kind of give as you're laying on them and then take away that pressure in those points. What makes the REI Helix stand out compared to other pads that use this system is that the difference in height between the raised areas and the lowered areas is quite significant, which provides more pressure relief than if it was a very shallow kind of difference between those 2 points. That being said, the REI Helix isn't perfect. It's quite heavy at 700 grams for the regular wide version, and it's not super thick. It's only 3 inches thick, so if you're on the heavier end, maybe above 200, 220 pounds, then you might be kind of pushing the limits of this pad and sinking through and hitting the ground with your shoulder or your hip. But if you're under 200 pounds and want the most comfortable pad out there, then definitely consider the REI Helix. The alternative to the REI Helix might be just as comfortable. It's the Zenbivy Flex sleeping pad. It has a very similar baffling system. The difference in height between the raised areas and then the lower area isn't quite as big as on the REI Helix, but the top of the Flex has a stretchy polyester material, which really helps with pressure relief as well. The Zenbivy Flex is also just as warm with an R value of 4.8 and slightly lighter at 685 grams. While the Zenbivy Flex is pretty much just as comfortable as the REI Helix, the reason I gave the award to the Helix is because of price. It costs $160, often going on sale for $120 compared to the $220 of the Zenbivy Flex. In order to get the award for the best all-around pad, a pad has to do everything well, basically, without compromising anything except for maybe price. And the Exped Ultra 5R achieves that and gets the award for the best all-around pad. It's very similar to the Ultra 3R, just quite a bit warmer with an R value of 4.8. It's still lightweight at 535 grams, so you're not sacrificing that much weight in order to achieve that warmth. And then it has all the comfort that the Ultra 3 has, which is to say that it's a very comfortable pad. The REI Helix has been my most used sleeping pad over the last year, but if there's a pad that could replace it as my most used, then it's probably the Ultra 5R. I've been taking it on more and more trips just due to how well-rounded it is. I'd kind of written off the new Exped pads when they first got released a couple years ago, but after lots of testing, they've really impressed me, and it's gotten to the point where the Exped Ultra 5R is probably the pad that I recommend to the most people out of all the pads that I've tested. An alternative all-arounder pad is the new Nemo Tensor All Season. It's quite a bit warmer than the Exped Ultra 5R, but it's not nearly as comfortable and weighs just about the same. It's now time for notable absentees because I know if I don't address this, there's gonna be a ton of comments asking where these pads were on this list. The first one could have been a contender for the most comfortable or the best all-arounder. It's the Big Agnes Rapide SL. This is the new version that got released at the end of 2023. Some of you out there might have the older version but bought it in 2024 because there's still a bunch on the market. But this new one uses a reflective insulation inside the pad in order to increase the R value into the high 4s and then decrease the weight. But while the new Rapide is just as comfortable as the old version, which is very comfortable because they didn't change the baffling system at all, the issue that I have with it is that it doesn't live up to its R value. When I use it under real world conditions, it just sleeps quite cold. I've had it in temperatures above freezing on warm ground, and I was getting cold on this pad, and I used it a bunch of different times. I A/B tested with other pads that had similar R values, and I didn't encounter issues with those other pads, whereas I did with the Rapide. My best guess as to what's happening is that the reflective insulation inside the Rapide is falling to the bottom of the pad once you inflate it and not suspended inside the pad. So you have significantly reduced effectiveness at insulating you from the ground and essentially have no insulation from the air that's touching the side and tops of the pad. I encountered the same issue with the Big Agnes Zoom UL, which uses the exact same insulation technology. The Zoom UL is also a really comfortable sleeping pad and could have won the award for the best ultralight pad if it lived up to its warmth rating. The third notable absentee is the Sea to Summit Ultralight XT. For a very long time, this was the most comfortable pad that I had ever tested. It was the first pad that I used with that dimpling baffling system and was great. The issue is that other pads took what the Ultralight XT does really well and just made better versions of it. They made warmer pads and they made pads that kind of had stretchier tops in order to make them more comfortable. If you're looking for the best pillow in order to match with your sleeping pad, I do a review of all the best pillows on the market and give you my recommendations for different kind of scenarios. I'll have that linked right up there. I think a pillow is probably just as important, if not more important, than a good sleeping pad.